Child's Museum. Yeah, Children's Museum up there. Okay, so today we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the Civil Rights Movement. I want to finish up talking about LBJ coming into office. So right after JFK was assassinated. I know we talked about the assassination, but we're going to talk about the Civil Rights Movement here as this is going on around that same time. And then, like I said, the Great Society, the start of LBJ's presidency. We're going to have that quiz, that test on Wednesday. And then we're going to finish up everything by next Friday, the 28th. That's it. Maybe watch a movie, Forrest Gump, if that's okay.
I think we should start that before.
Before, well, I got to get through some information yet. Vietnam War to present, so quite a bit of information, but we'll get through it. We'll get through it.
Is this our last class?
No, we'll have one next Friday, the 28th.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Come on now. All right, so bell ringer. Here we go. So explain the impact of the JFK assassination. So how did this change things when we look at the Cold War, look at a relationship with the Soviet Union, maybe with his movements with the space race, the new frontier. Okay, maybe you could talk a little bit about, obviously, the Civil Rights Movement. I got to mention a little bit under Eisenhower with Brown versus Board of Ed. Okay, so there you go. You guys get working on that.
He got assassinated 3 years into his term.
Yep, he was elected in 60.
You think you would have got reelected?
I think so, yeah. I think so.
How do you think the country would have been if he wasn't assassinated?
Not sure. I would think maybe a little bit better. Because I know there was tensions between him and LBJ, who replaced him, and they didn't see too eye to eye, even though he was a vice president with them. But, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Not sure. There's a lot of things going on in the 60s that can't really put a clear answer on that. Elvis. Yeah. The rock star, even though he was
When did he die?
not the greatest person to look up to. Yeah, he died on the commode. OD'd and didn't have the greatest diet.
I heard he squeezed too hard.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's what I heard.
Well, he had a lot of things going on. Like I said, he didn't have a great diet and drug
He
use.
squeezed too hard like an air bubble.
Well,
Who was the president that got stuck in the bathtub?
Taft, yeah.
Boy.
I don't know if that's totally true or not. All right, explain the impact of the JFK assassination. So how is this impactful? In a way, many people try to like resemble the 60s, okay, try to signify the 60s with this assassination, just because there's so much turmoil in the United States, a lot of issues arising right around this time. Like I mentioned, we talked about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Today we're going to talk about the Civil Rights Movement. Okay, a lot of different conflicts going on. The Cuban Missile Crisis, the arms race, the space race. Holy, you name it. Okay, drugs, all this type of jazz going on in the 60s. So, Cody, what do you have for this?
So the impact of the JFK assassination was huge. It's the first time a president was assassinated since Abe Lincoln. Just 3 years into his first term, things were looking good for the United States, and then he was assassinated. It was devastating for everyone that like supported him, voted for him, and it was scary for the United States because like, after the Cold War happened and all that, everyone thought it was a Russian spy that killed him.
Okay.
So
Yeah, good. So everybody was already on edge, right, with the Cold War. The Cuban Missile Crisis, everybody was creating fallout shelters in their backyards or looking to locations in these urban areas where they could seek refuge in case of a nuclear war. And then, like you mentioned, okay, with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we'll talk today about the Civil Rights Movement. Okay, there's a lot of things going on right around this time. The Vietnam War is building up. Okay, we're actually sending troops over right around this time, 63, to Vietnam to try to contain communism from spreading into this parts of Asia. So yeah, there are a lot of issues going on, but with JFK, I mean, he de-escalated that situation with Cuba, and he tried to do his best, obviously, with trying to prevent a nuclear warfare from happening, and he did. He was successful, right, with the blockade, and then direct communication between the Soviet Union and the United States. And for him to actually reach out to Khrushchev and come to terms of removing these nuclear weapons from Cuba and from Western Europe, I'd say he was pretty successful with his negotiations. So in a way, de-escalating that situation. Jakari, what's up?
How would he have like gotten in contact with him? Like, I don't think he would have just flew over to Russia.
Phone call.
Yeah, phone call.
Yeah.
I was thinking like email maybe.
Email. Yeah. No, phone call. Direct line right to.
Okay.
Yeah. They didn't really use it too much through diplomats really, but he actually had direct communication with Khrushchev about this situation. So yeah. And then the space race, the new frontier, right? How he's trying to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. So yeah, JFK had a ton of success in just his 3 years of presidency. And obviously, the assassination, okay, obviously, when you think of JFK, that's the first thing you think about. And that's just something that will stick in everybody's mind because it was on video, it was on tape. And yeah, I'm sure you went home and checked it out then, which I hope you all didn't do that. But yeah, you could see it, you could visualize it, and it just kind of showed that everybody was, I guess you say, not untouchable. That even the president, he wasn't safe in this time, obviously, with the heat and the aggression, the competitiveness between the Soviet Union and the United States. Again, many people try to really pick out, was it a Russian spy? Was Lee Harvey Oswald a part of this Russian spy ring? Was it a Cuban, I don't know, a Cuban anarchist that was trying to get back at the United States from the Bay of Pigs? No one really knows. Does Lee Harvey Oswald have some sort of tie to the Soviet Union? Yeah, he lived there for about 2 years. Okay, he married a lady from the Soviet Union, had a child. He was a part of this Marxist movement, socialist movement, and he was kind of explaining to many of the American people, the public, of the wrongdoings of the United States with the Bay of Pigs and many other issues that the United States was a part of during this time after World War II. So yeah, his presidency, we shouldn't think of the assassination right away. He really did a lot for the United States in this short 3 years. And today, we'll talk about the Civil Rights Movement and his doings in the Civil Rights Movement, trying to help many of these Americans, okay, African Americans gain opportunities in the United States with desegregation of public schools and institutions and giving the same opportunity for many of these people, especially in the South, where they'll be challenged a lot, which we'll talk today about. Cody, you have your hand up? What's up?
I was gonna ask, did things like start de-escalating between us and Russia, like when Putin was elected, or before that?
Many people say it never really came to a close, but yeah, 91, the Soviet Union collapsed. That's kind of when things started getting better. Democracy was formed there and communism was disbanded, but really today, even though they have elections, Putin's always in charge, right, and always in some sort of leadership there. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think too much has changed since the Soviet Union, but definitely things got a little bit better. Yeah, a little bit better. All right. They fell as a superpower. We're considered the only superpower right now in the world as China's rising up and Russia's close,
So
right?
apparently North Korea sent some sort of missiles our way as a warning.
Really? What, over the
But I
Sea of
don't know if it was
Japan?
true or not, but I read that somewhere.
I'll have to check it
Yeah,
out.
They did it for Joe Biden. More Joe Biden.
Ooh, to look into it. I didn't hear anything about that. All right, so terms for today. We have 5 of them. Okay, I'll talk about these events today. And yeah, tomorrow I'll finish up with the civil rights movement. Kind of like in a nutshell here. Like I said, we need to keep moving through this information towards the end of the year. And tomorrow I'd like to finish up with the civil rights movement and talk about the Great Society that LBJ is trying to initiate after the assassination of JFK. So Rosa Parks, Montgomery bus boycotts, Little Rock 9, Greensboro sit-ins, and the Freedom Riders. There you go. Jeez. Oh, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. I'll give you some time. How about 5 minutes here? 4 to 5 minutes. We'll go over these.
There's not going to be too much going on next week, right?
No, just gonna continue through, try to finish this last presentation. That's it. I won't try to put any homework out for you. All right, what do we have? Rosa Parks. What do we got here, Cody? Who is she?
American activist in the civil rights movement, best known for pivotal roles in Montgomery.
All right, good job. So she really initiated these Montgomery bus boycotts because we all know refused to give up her seat in the front of the bus. Okay, and this was really right after the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat in 1955. Okay, and the desegregation of public schools is what really kicked off the civil rights movement even more. Like, yeah, we know we talked about it in the progressive era with the creation of the NAACP, Plessy versus Ferguson in the late 1800s, allowing the separate but equal, the segregation all throughout the South, and really the creation of the Jim Crow laws after the Civil War. But finally, in the 50s, 1950s, we mentioned in World War I, World War II, right? Okay, how opportunities were being expanded for many of these African Americans for obviously their time in World War I and World War II. Okay, we talked about the Tuskegee Airmen, right? You guys remember them? Okay, how they were opening up bombing runs over top of Germany. Came home and faced segregation in the South. South faced a lot of different issues with with opportunities in the United States. So Rosa Parks, right after the Brown versus Board of Education, the desegregation of public schools, okay, she was challenging the transportation systems in the United States, especially in the South, okay, and Alabama. Okay, today Alabama is going to be brought up a lot, Arkansas as well. Okay, so 1955, she refused to give up her seat in the front of the bus and kind of pushed for the Montgomery bus boycotts. And what are the Montgomery bus boycotts? What do you have, Autumn? Yeah, good, good. So public transportation. The only way that, obviously the cities are providing this transportation for the people. And if people refuse to buy a ticket, if people refuse to partake in these services, what do you think happens to this transportation system? It's going to fall apart, right? Okay, if no one's buying tickets, if no one's using this public transportation, then sooner or later, the city's going to have to come in, fund more money to it, or they're just going to disband the transportation system. So just refusing the service, refusing to buy tickets to utilize the buses and the transportation caused a lot of issues. And Rosa Parks really pushed for this Montgomery bus boycotts. Martin Luther King was like, you know what? The way we're going to try to challenge these issues in the South with the Jim Crow laws and how they're not following suit with what the United States is trying to push out. Okay, and as a nation trying to push all throughout the country is, well, we're going to refuse to use the bus service. We're going to refuse to use the transportation in the United States. So yeah, a form of nonviolent protest, right? Yeah. All right, Little Rock 9. What do you have? Angel, go ahead.
Little Rock Farms group of non-African American students enrolled in Little Rock Central High School. They were initially prevented from entering the racially segregated school by the governor of Arkansas.
Yep, good job, good job. So in Arkansas, Little Rock 9, because of Brown versus Board of Education, this school in Arkansas allowed for African Americans to partake in the education system there, and it was faced with a lot of backlash by the people in Arkansas. Okay, a lot of the people were white, did not want to see their children go to school. The African Americans of the Little Rock 9, these 9 students, and it caused a lot of issues, a lot of chaos in a way at the school district. People even explained that they're going to pull their children out of the school district and homeschool them or take them to another school district. A lot of these people being attacked, the Little Rock 9 being attacked and verbally being abused by many of the people of that town of Little Rock, Arkansas. And it pushed even more, okay, with obviously crosses being burned in their yards, the KKK, kind of a reappearance, a reemergence of the KKK in these areas that were accepting of African Americans in the school district. All right, Little Rock 9, good. Greensboro sit-ins. What do we have here? Haley Klinger, what do you have for the Greensboro sit-ins?
civil rights protests that started in 1960, where young African American students staged to sit in at a segregated lunch and refused to leave after leaving.
Yeah, good job. Greensboro, North Carolina. So these states in the South still trying to hold on to the Jim Crow laws and segregation, keeping African Americans and whites, different in restaurants and public facilities. So the Greensboro sit-ins were a group of African Americans and even people, white protesters as well. A nonviolent protest. They went to a restaurant, sat in, okay, and they were trying to really challenge the rules and guidelines that were established in these restaurants to try to keep this separate but equal idea. And they were just trying to challenge it, saying we need to desegregate these restaurants. Here's a picture of it. I'll bring it up. Of these sit-ins in Greensboro. Okay, so like I said, they were refused service. These people, not only African Americans, but even white protesters, they were sitting at the booth, and they were trying to really challenge the guidelines that were set out by the restaurant. Okay, they were like, oh, we're not going to leave until we're served. We're going to continue to just sit in these seats to prevent any other people from sitting down and having a service there at the restaurant. So obviously, you kind of know what happened. These people that were sitting at the booth, they weren't served. They weren't given really what they weren't given their order or anything like that. So these people all around grouped around and heard about the protest, and they were served slushies, drinks, whatever it might be, and they started dumping the soda, the slushies, the food all over these people that were protesting in Greensboro. And again, a form of nonviolent protest. They're not going in trying to cause any type of rebellious action or destroying any of the restaurant's property. They're just waiting for service, waiting to be served by that restaurant. And as you can see, the people around dumping their slushies on these protesters, the Greensboro sit-in protesters, and dumping their drinks and throwing their food on them until they moved. And many occasions actually caused for people to try to pull these people from the booth and actually beat them up. It was, like I said, a sad event, but it actually pushed a lot of desegregation in these areas in the South. So yeah, in the 1900s, we talked about the NAACP, W.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington. They did a great job, but now with pictures, video, news broadcasts, people can see this actually unfolding and happening and realize, what, there is an issue. Some of these things need to be solved. Okay, where are we at here now with the vocab? Oh, Freedom Riders. What do we have for the Freedom Riders? What do we got here? Kale, what do you have for the Freedom Riders?
Freedom Riders were civil rights activists who rode interstate buses into segregated South southern United States in 1961 and subsequent years to challenge the non-enforcement of the United States Supreme Court. All
right, good job. Good job. There are two court cases, one in 1946 and actually one in 1960 to try to desegregate public transportation. Okay, these buses, and make sure that they're protected by the police, protected by the authority. And these Freedom Riders actually, we talked about the Montgomery bus boycotts. After a while, they were successful. The city started to try to desegregate these transportation systems for the people. And in the Freedom Riders, they wanted to try to challenge these court decisions. Although they were national Supreme Court decisions, which should spread to all states, do you think the South really recognized them? No, they didn't. So the Freedom Riders wanted to challenge it and say, hey, we need to be protected if we're going to utilize these transportation systems. We're going to challenge it, okay, to try to prove a point to the rest of America. And with these Freedom Riders, some of the police authorities actually joined in on the protests, on the movement, against the movement, sorry, and actually destroyed the buses, throwing firebombs. Okay, and as you can see here, here's some destruction of the bus, literally trying to kill these people on the bus and their protest against the desegregation. And even the cops joining in. Like I said, they're trying to destroy the bus. They're trying to end this protest because of the hard ties yet to the deep South of the Jim Crow laws and some of the issues with segregation. So the Freedom Riders, again, trying to challenge these court cases that were established to try to desegregate the public system and say that, you know what, we're not protected. Okay, even the police officers, the authority were jumping in. Okay, they should be protecting these protesters, but that did not happen. And as you can see, the buses were literally destroyed. And like I said, a white mob, a lynch mob, tried to prevent this movement from happening, from occurring. All right, so today, real quick, I just want to go over a couple slides. We'll finish up tomorrow with the civil rights movement. But some of these movements here, these activist protests, these were very, very impactful. So like I mentioned, just with the Freedom Riders, here's a slide on it. All right, so organized African-American groups start bus rides across the South. Again, they're trying to protest the Supreme Court ban on segregated bus seating. So really push from the Rosa Parks movement, okay, and the Montgomery bus boycotts. Okay, again, if no one's really utilizing the transportation system, if no one's buying tickets to utilize it, then the city, the town, the state will have to fund for this transportation system, costing a lot of money, obviously, for that state or for the town, whatever the transportation system is being utilized for. And these court cases really pushed in favor for desegregation of these transportation systems. And they're trying to challenge the upholding to these Supreme Court cases. And they're going to be trying to utilize the transportation system eventually, like I said, in the 60s, after the Montgomery bus boycotts proved their point. And they want to challenge authority, the police authority in the South. So the Freedom Riders sent out 2 buses, and they actually hope to prevent or provoke violence and make Kennedy administration enforce the law. Okay, again, they're traveling all throughout the South, stopping at different locations and seeing if, obviously, the people would utilize these buses, and knowing that the buses were full with, African Americans and even people that pushed for the desegregation in the South. So trying to cause an uproar, trying to prove to was still infused with this deep hatred and the Jim Crow laws. These Southern Democrats were still enforcing these laws against the opportunity for equality in the South. So 200 angry white protesters, lynch mobs, tried to attack the bus and tried to stop this protest from occurring, which, like I mentioned, destroyed the bus with different fire bombs. And as you can see, it's literally ripped apart to try to prevent this protest from moving even further in the South. And with pictures, news broadcasts, and on the news and on the television for everybody to see, this pushed JFK to make a decision, okay, and push for the civil rights movement, okay, the Civil Rights Act. Okay, and, like I mentioned, he would be assassinated in '63. Civil Rights Act will be enacted in '65 by LBJ. So JFK, he had a vision, right? He wanted to try to solve some of these issues in the South, and this one especially, a great example of how things need to be changed for his new frontier. Are you guys good with that? I know I showed you a picture before with going over the vocab. So federal marshals step in. So with that being said, some police officers didn't show up. Some of them actually partook in the violence, actually tried to prevent this bus from even being moved and actually joining in on the lynching, joining in on the mob strikes against this nonviolent protest. Again, they're trying to push for violence, but they're doing it in a peaceful way, a peaceful manner. So President Kennedy sent 400 U.S. Marshals for support, try to end this violent uprising against this movement. And segregation was banned in travel facilities such as waiting rooms, restaurants, and lunch counters. Okay, I know I talked about the sit-ins. The sit-ins happened in 1960. And this is happening right around the same time. So there's a lot of movements occurring all throughout, mostly in the South, to try to actually form equality for the African Americans, especially in the South, but all throughout the United States. All right, the last thing I want to talk about today is actually Alabama University, and it's in Fort Gump. So if we get to watch it at the end of the year, it talks about this event, and it was Governor Walz of Alabama. He was trying to prevent African Americans from joining in the college, joining the university, and he literally stood in front of the door. And news outlets, news media were at this event, filming it and seeing what was going to happen, what was going to unfold. Because at the national standpoint, JFK was saying, "Hey, desegregation. We're going to allow the African Americans the same opportunity, going to the same school, the same university, public transportation, restaurants, right?" And this was pushed from the Brown versus Board of Education. And Governor Walz literally stood right in front of the door. Okay, again, signifying the state's, I guess to say, mentality of these national laws being pushed out of desegregation. And Governor Walz, with the Alabama State Police, kind of stood behind and stood in front of the Alabama doors, preventing African Americans to utilize it. So JFK sent the National Guard to try to disband this and actually protect the African Americans walking into the school. And it really just showed the significance of this, right? Even though states have their own power, even though states kind of dictate what they will allow inside their own borders, inside their own state boundaries, the national government has the ability, through federalism, right, to try to push for equality, even in this situation where the state's refusing services to this group of people, to African Americans. And the government, JFK, coming in with the National Guard and literally forcing the state to open their doors. Okay, open their doors to African Americans to join for their education, for their opportunity. And again, it just shows how in federalism, the national government reigns supreme in these issues, okay, and these types of events. All right, and here's a picture of Wallace standing in the doorway and the National Guard kind of coming up and telling him, "Hey, open up your doors here." Here's Governor Walz, again, standing in the doorway with many of the Alabama State Police preventing these African Americans from walking into school. And JFK sends his National Guard. Here's a representative of him saying, "Hey, you got to open up, man. If not, the National Guard is going to be called here. And I don't think this will look good for the state of Alabama or for you and your political career moving forward if you don't allow to open your doors up for this group of people, for African Americans to have the right to their education opportunity for." And in Forrest Gump, there's a clip. Forrest is kind of standing in the background. He's like, "Hey, what's going on?" Because he went to Alabama. He played football there. And he's like watching, he's looking around. And one of the African American students dropped their book. And he's like, "Hey, you dropped this, drop this." He like walks in front of the camera and everything of this event actually unfolding and going on. Everybody just like pins it at Forrest. And he's like, "Hey," he like walks away. I think it's pretty cool how they kind of filmed him in these big events that were occurring through the 60s and moving up into modern time. That's why we're going to watch it. There's so many events that are talked about post World War II. All right, is there any questions on that, guys? That's good. All right, that's all I have for today. So the start of the Civil Rights Movement, we see the activists, we see some of the protests, the nonviolent protests occurring, and tomorrow we'll talk about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and how this is going to push for the Civil Rights Act, 1965. Okay.